I was delighted when I heard something which sounded so solid, so credible, so hummable, and if an audience would have a chance to hear this, that they could immediately connect to it. And there's a fabulous story behind it. It sure adds an awful lot to the music when you know the story behind it.
My name is Harold Van Heuvelen.
Van grew up in Huron, South Dakota. He's very organized. He's a person who has many different kinds of talents. He's very musical. He built our home in Bismarck, North Dakota, and just generally a very beloved human being.
I started piano when I was 7. Mother thought that we should all have piano lessons. At that time, I was a boy, and I'd rather be out playing football than practicing piano. When I learned a piece, I liked it, you know, then I could play it, and I kind of enjoyed that. My dad really loved music. He was always getting us around the piano for sing-alongs. It seemed like music was in our house all the time. My dad bought my first violin. It was, I think he paid $35 for it. When I got to be 14, I started helping music majors with their final recitals. The newspaper would always write these concerts up, you know, and I started to get some rave notices about my playing.
These were very, very popular things growing up. KFYR was the big station, statewide, and Van would play there, my mother would play there, and people, you know, they still talk about it. That's how memorable these events were.
In college, he spent his summers in Yellowstone National Park working for the YP company.
They had special names for all of the workers, and the porters were called pack rats.
Which is a job they described as a person who would help the incoming dudes or the visitors.
So I took this one party down. It was just 2 months before the season ended. And the party that I took down happened to be the superintendent from Miles City, Montana. He was very curious to ask me a bunch of questions about my schooling, and I told him, you know, that I had studied at Hope College and that I had a major in music and minor in mathematics, German, English, and teaching. So he became very interested, and to make a long story short, before I got through talking to him, he had hired me as a teacher. And he must have been pretty hard up because there was just two weeks before school started.
Everybody knew that he was the voice of music in Bismarck, that his band won national acclaim. Lots of my family members played in that band. I never had the privilege of doing so because I had no musical ability, but Van was able to coax musical ability out of almost anyone.
I started teaching in 1941.
And the war broke out, and he enlisted in the United States Army.
I went in the Army in July of 1942. Because I'd had that year of teaching, I was kind of labeled as an instructor. And during my initial interview into the Army, why the interviewee told me that I should try out for OCS. The officer candidate school was for 3 months, and then I came out of that as a second lieutenant.
After Brookings, he was assigned to a training program in New Orleans, Louisiana, where he spent over 3 years of World War II.
During April of 1945, peace was declared with Germany, and when that was declared, our candidates started to dwindle, so we had very few candidates anymore. And it went down and down until we hardly had any. And the word was that we should report for duty every morning, but we could do what we wanted to do, and most of the fellows wrote house plans because they figured they were going to get out of the service sometime. But I wrote a symphony.
That is an amazing feat for me. Anybody who can write a symphony, period, but the idea that you're in the Army writing a symphony at the same time is kind of overwhelming.
I saw the symphony the very first time when I was a little boy sitting on the bookshelf in Bismarck, North Dakota. From the time they moved into the house in 1945, I went to Tanglewood with my dad and then came back, and it was on the bookshelf until they left our family home in about 1995.
When my first wife passed away in 2003, he came out and helped me straighten up the house a little bit and look at things. And he found the symphony and he asked me about it. And then he got busy talking to people in Washington, D.C.
Bob kind of, I guess, took up the next few steps. He got me a CD, and I think it's some kind of a computerized recording, as I understand it.
The reason we had it digitized and why that was important is I wasn't sure at that point that actually the symphony would ever be performed by a real live orchestra, and I wanted to make sure my father had a chance to hear the symphony because I knew how much energy he'd put into it. For the ordinary music lover, the score is pretty much impenetrable. So none of us would be able to understand it or hear it or appreciate it unless it had been put into some form where you could listen to it.
My name is Art Slater, and I'm a copyist for this project. Well, when I applied for the job, I didn't know what the symphony was going to be about. It really wasn't until I met up with Bob that I actually saw the score, and I was quite impressed.
I came up with a master score, which is about that thick, 208 pages, and I wrote parts for everybody in a 90-piece symphony.
Every single day I worked on that piece, I knew he would appreciate it because I looked at it from the standpoint of a musician, and then in his letters reminds me of Beethoven, who wrote for his art but could never hear what he wrote, which elevates the art because it says, I think it's something beyond me. Even if I can't hear it, it's something that I know will last for the ages.
When you compose music, you have an inner ear that hears the music before you write it. And as you write it, you draw from that inner ear. It's the reason Beethoven could compose music when he was stone deaf.
There's a whole lot of folks who write symphonies who never hear them. There's a whole lot of great composers who have written symphonies in their lifetime who have never heard them.
Oftentimes composers labor in obscurity. Oftentimes the work that is produced never gets performed. And in my father's case, with this particular piece of music, it meant that this treasure chest, which had never been opened, was going to be revealed to us as well as to music lovers around the world.
Being chairman of the Armed Services Committee with a World War II veteran who composed a symphony which has been sitting on the shelf, unplayed, unlooked at apparently, even by his own family who were kind of caught by surprise. What? Dad wrote a symphony?
The idea of it all, you know, something that has been lost all these years, and then a chance to pay a tribute to our veterans.
I'm just grateful to have a vicarious part in that play because it's just wonderful. And not only is he happy, but I'm happy to have helped in some small way.
You know, my role was to talk to Senator Levin, to get him to talk to the United States Army to see if the band would perform it. And I was delighted to have, you know, a little bit of this.
It struck me as being very playable, very memorable for people who heard it. You could walk out of a concert humming or singing. So I thought that, by God, this veteran, it'd be great if his symphony could be played.
It's a wonderful human interest story, and then when you play the first notes and you know that after over 60 years, this is the first time it's sounding. And I know it's been in his head all this time, but now everyone else gets a chance to hear it.
I had no real expectation that it would be ever played, let alone by the U.S. Army Symphony. Within a couple of weeks, we got notification from Major Addison that they had decided to have the symphony played, not just the fourth movement, but the entire symphony.
To be a part of it, it feels more like a conduit than anything else, that it's not about me, it's not about the orchestra, it's about making this happen, and it was meant to be, as it were.
He let out a war whoop and said, "I can't believe it. I cannot believe this." And he said, just even knowing that it's been considered is satisfaction for me, and even if it doesn't happen, just know this has made me one of the happiest people I could ever be.
It is rewarding to see somebody's dream come true. And I think this was certainly a dream of Van's. And to have it performed at such a high level, and to get the extraordinary attention that's receiving, I think has got to be very deeply satisfying to him, and of course that makes me happy.
It's really cool to see somebody with that remarkable recall, with that remarkable investment in a piece of music, and to have this buried treasure found. It was really, really cool.
I think it's wonderful that people get to hear that mindset of a young man in wartime, reflecting on it and expressing it in musical terms.
I mean, this is, I think, a tribute really to veterans everywhere. That Van did this, wrote this when he was in the service, that the Army Band is performing it, and I know it's going to put a smile on a lot of people's faces.
The wonderful thing about music is that it's not just encapsulated in its own time, it's there for the ages. So while it's important for us to remember the context in which he does this, it's going to be there for as long as music is going to be around, and it's going to be there for people to enjoy on its own terms. And I think he'd be happy with that as well.
I'm happy that God gave me the talent to do it. I happen to think I got a nice little tuneful theme that comes through beautifully.
Right now, as you know, we're very, very focused on the contribution of World War II veterans to the peace. And so this symphony comes at a time when we're losing so many of our World War II vets. And it was an opportunity to help celebrate their contribution to our country.
After all of this time, that he and his family were able to hear this, and that we were able to salute veterans with such a great story. This is a wonderful human interest story, and we're very happy that we can play it.
I'd like to say a big thank you to the U.S. Army Symphony and its conductor, Todd Edison, for doing this. And I'd like to say a big thank you to my two sons who supported me and were so enthusiastic about all of this.
We gave Van a chance to listen to it and to have a first audible experience actually listening to his own musical work. I guess it was one of those moments of just realizing that one of his life's dreams had just been realized. And the look on his face was worth $1 million. It was just fabulous. He was just glowing.
It was way beyond my expectations. It was wonderful.